Hello, evening, afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Hello and welcome to Equilibrium Collective, or if you're on the like page, it's Equilibrium Paranormal UK. We still haven't quite changed that yet. I'm Kerry Ann. I'm your host this evening. I'm joined by my co-host, or what's it? Equally my host. The host, we host both together. Sarah.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Kids are back at school. Yes. Bit of
Yes,
silence. I never thought I'd
yes.
have silence ever again, but here we are.
It hits differently, doesn't it? When you're just sitting in that room and you're just
Oh,
looking at
it's
a plain
so,
wall. Yeah,
yeah, such a
and
beautiful moment.
and your brain's not even thinking. You're not even engaged. There's nothing there, and it's just silence.
I
Hello,
can't
Jason.
think of anything more spiritual than that.
It's a moment. It's a special
It
moment
is.
that parents all over the world are making the most of. I love my children and they are around me all the time. It is the best thing ever. But yeah, them quiet moments, just everything. So yeah. So yeah, kids are back at school. We have a little bit of normality back. Welcome, Simon. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Jason, for joining us. It's so good to see you in the comments. And welcome those that are watching us live and those that are going to be watching us in the future. We welcome you. So this evening, me and Sarah are going to be talking about Hans Holzer. Now, I'd never really heard about this man before until I started to do some research with Sarah regarding the Amityville horror or the Amityville haunting, or however you want to refer to it as. I started to see this man's name appear and I'd never heard from him before, so I just took a note of it and just cracked on. And then literally in the same day, I come across the Holzer files, which again, I'm now becoming more familiar with this man, and I'm wondering, why have I never heard of him before? I've been doing research in the paranormal now for over 10 years, very familiar with Harry Price and the weird and wonderful things that he's been up to, and yet I've never come across this man before. So I thought, why not? Why not learn something new and see what I get from it at the end of it, because it's all growth. So, Sarah, have you heard of him before?
Not until you mentioned him to me, actually. No. Like, who? Say what now?
I know. And I was like, where have I been? Anyone that's watching, tell me, have you heard of him? Because I haven't. And he seems to be as prevalent as Harry Price, and he seems to be as pioneering. And there's lots of questionability around him at the moment, or back then, should I say. He is a little bit later on after Harry Price. He died in 2009 at the age of 85, 83, 84, that age. So he's in our era. He was living in our time. So I was very, very, I was unsure why I hadn't come across him before. But before we carry on discussing Hans Holzer, we're going to do a little bit. We're having lots of fun this evening. So we've been doing lives now with you guys for about 8 months. We've kept things very, very vanilla, and we're looking to spice it up a little bit. We're going to bring in some videos. We're doing some screen sharing. We've never done this before, so we're going to be doing that. And also, we aren't experts on Hans Holzer, his cases, the people that he worked with, but we have had lots of fun learning about him, and we can't wait to share what we've learned. So we hope you enjoy it as much as we've enjoyed learning about him. So we're going to do a little screen share, so bear with us callers while I quickly, I would say, hand over to my beautiful assistant, but no, I am at the hand here. So we're going to be looking at, and I don't know whether these old school ghost researchers, I want to say ghost hunters, I mean, it's habit at the moment because of the amount of research I've done on him, but those that have been in the game for a very long time will be familiar of the TV show In Search Of. And this was a show that was hosted by Leonard Nimoy, and he would talk about the oddities of the world. Talk about ghosts, aliens, cryptology, you name it, he spoke about it. So we come across a great little video, a little bit of intro, and we thought, who better to introduce himself than Leonard Nimoy and Hans Holzer himself. So bear with us. I will be with you. Please comment in the chats to let us know if you've heard about him and any stories that you've heard. In the meantime,
There are stories of ghosts and of hauntings to suit every taste, from the playful to the macabre. But those who have studied ghosts claim to have discerned patterns in their behavior, what might be set down as rules of the haunt. For example, a ghost might be thought of as the spirit of someone who died in emotional turmoil. Further, it seems the spirit remains close to the place associated with the turmoil. Finally, it appears that the ghost wanders in its restless limbo until relieved of whatever its burden is. The best way to learn more about ghosts is to consult a ghost hunter. Hans Holzer understands rules of ghostly behavior perhaps better than anyone else. It is his business to investigate hauntings. Holzer is a doctor of parapsychology and has written dozens of books on ghosts.
Over the years, I've developed some pretty foolproof methods to explore the phenomena scientifically. I've used highly sensitive cameras and even more sensitive people, psychics, to get information which will lead to the discovery of a ghost. But in all my years of ghost hunting, I have never been afraid. After all, a ghost is only a fellow human being in trouble.
Holzer may not be frightened by ghosts, but most of the people who call on him for help are.
So I hope you was able to enjoy that video with us. I hope you see that. Everything okay at that end? Did we do okay?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So Hans Holzer was a very interesting character. He started life as a associate editor. He worked on a scientific antiques magazine and a freelance writer. He was born in Austria, and after a while he was able to get his studies in America. He gained a master's in comparative religion, and he went on to get a doctorate in parapsychology at the London College of Applied Science. He then went on to teach as well at New York Institute of Tech. And I've listed, it might seem I'm a little bit reedy because there's a lot of information here, but he wrote a lot of books, and he wrote over 140 books, and they started off in 1963. The first book he wrote was Ghost Hunter. He then went on to write Haunted House album, 1971. Elvis Presley Speaks, 1981. American Haunted Houses, 1991. Murder in Amityville. Now, Murder in Amityville was wrote in 1973, and this was what inspired the second film for, I think it was Amityville Murder. He wrote an introduction to Ghosts in 1977, and he went 1997, sorry, and he went on to write many, many more. The last two books he wrote was called Stay Behinds, which is what he referred to as the ghosts that didn't move on, those that were stuck behind. Stay Behind's True Encounters with the World Beyond, 2012, and This House is Haunted, the True Encounters with the World Beyond, and that again was in 2012, and that was the last book he wrote. So what I learned about him was that there was a lot of controversy around what he was able to achieve and what he didn't. So there was a lot of question about him coining the term ghost hunter and also coining the term the other side. Both of those phrases were used before his time. Harry Price, who we have a show coming up next week about Harry Price and everything that he got up to, but Harry Price was the first notable author that wrote about communication and referring to himself as a ghost hunter, Confessions of a Ghost Hunter. That was in 1936. And Other Side was referred to as I Woke, Conditions of Life on the Other Side, communicated by automatic writing in 1895. So yes, I'm giving you lots of information and I'm reading lots because there's lots in there and I don't want to get it wrong. But one thing that I found quite interesting about Hans Holzer was when he was asked about the scientific methods that are used today with today's modern ghost hunts. Like I said, he passed away in 2009, so he was in a time where scientific methods had been quite firmly established. He referred to, and I apologize for my language, but he said it was BS. He didn't agree with how people investigated with the gadgets that are used today. And his kit was very, very simplistic. He used a medium, those that work with trance. He used a reel-to-reel recorder, and he used a sensitive camera. That is all he used on his investigations. Now, so what's your opinion on that type of kit?
I mean, at the time, that's sort of like standard. But I think since we've come further and we've now got K2 meters, we've got EMF detectors, and we've got SLS cams, I think they all have their place.
Well, this is the fact as well, and he didn't dispute evidence of spirit. He used obviously his techniques, and he had his spiritual mediums and trance mediums. I say spiritual, they weren't all spiritual, but he used mediums, and he took their word as gospel. So if they were getting XYZ via a medium, he wasn't them using scientific methods to discredit or to debunk or to not debunk. So whatever he received, he took as gospel. When he wrote his books, he never said allegedly or it is said or the story goes. He never used any of those terminologies. He spoke his truth and the experience that he got, and that's how he presented his evidence. This happened. Spirit spoke to me, and this is what they said.
Yeah, I do think it is so important to debunk if you can, because we've all heard of pareidolia, we've all heard an animal in the garden, like, for example, foxes, and it sounds like a scream. I think it's so important to get the absolute certainty as much as you can to debunk what you can.
I agree, especially when you're putting so much literature out there that is being used for research going forward. People are referring to these books. I will say that Hans has always said, or Hans, for some reason, all of a sudden, Hans has already said that he believes in spirit. He believes that there is a spirit world. He believes that the people that he communicated are people that have, they were once people and they are trapped. And he believed that it was his mission to be the one that released them and allowed them to move forward, which is what he did with the spiritualist mediums and the techniques that he used. I have an abstract that I kind of got from the Ghost Hunter book, the first book he ever wrote. It's in the introductory bio part, and he says, "I am a professional investigator of ghosts, haunted houses, and other spontaneous phenomena. To use the scientific term, there is anything of supernatural nature, not fully explained by orthodox happenings, and thus falling into the realm of parapsychology or psychic research." So this is his belief. This is what underpinned his research, his investigations. What I found so fascinating with Hans is he is a parapsychologist. When you look at parapsychology, their forefront is to prove what something isn't before they establish what it is. So just because something is paranormal, by definition, it just means unexplained. It doesn't mean it's a ghost or a spirit or anything else. It just means that by empirical research methods and logic and rational and whatever, it doesn't fall within that realm. So therefore, it is paranormal. He hasn't got that approach. He doesn't say that this proves that this isn't something that can be easily explained away. He's saying, yeah, this is spirit. We've got spirit here and we're chatting and we're going to sort this out and we're going to move on forward, which is completely turning on his head parapsychology. I can only imagine what that did within the community in terms of the research he was putting out there and the content, because he put so much literature out there, so much. In particular, I'm really fascinated with the Elvis Speaks book. I really want to know more about that, because he believed that he had communication with Elvis. So, but please, if you've got anything that you want to say, please feel free to comment. And yes, Leonard Nimoy was an oddity himself, but he was very fascinating. And who was I speaking to? Sarah. We were talking earlier, and she's like, I don't know who this is. I was like, what? How can you not know who this man is? She's like, no idea. Because I couldn't pronounce his name. Yeah, I was like, how do we pronounce his name? She's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? I was like, no, what is this? So like I said, he didn't use terminology like alleged or it's argued or it has been said. He used terminology as very deterministic. Basically, his approach. This is what's happening. So with anything, there are skeptics. This is what makes the world goes round. It is what we live for. We love to have a for and against argument. There's people that see things differently. This is what makes everything the way it is. So this is what Hans Holzer spoke when he spoke about skeptics. This is what he said. For everyone except the skeptic, the evidence of this is overwhelming. For the skeptic, all of this will always be unacceptable, no matter how concrete the grounds for believing. Hiya. So I think that with anything you have confirmation bias. So from the perspective that he's standing from, he's saying that if you're a skeptic, you're not going to ever agree or see from the perspective other than your own. But I think that argument could be had on both sides. I feel like if you have the belief system already installed, you're more likely to be predispositioned to believe that something is paranormal or spirit. I believe that. What about you, Sarah? Lost on me.
Just letting you go on.
Sorry, I'm ready.
Yeah, no, I believe that beliefs make your reality. So, I mean, it can be argued for or against. The belief system of people, just humanity in general, is such a strong emotional thing that takes us back to what we was talking about in the last one, in the last video, about how you project your beliefs and can potentially end up manifesting things in your reality.
Yeah. And there's lots of studies in terms of suggestibility and people seeking what they find, like you said. So there is lots of research for what he is arguing for. Skeptics can be argued the same for those that believe. But like Jason says, for a skeptic, no proof is enough. It's always good to have a really practical approach to things and have a logical. But I think it's also important to have a good balance. Sometimes things are unexplainable, and that's just what it is.
And you have to have people ask questions as well.
Yeah, definitely.
The more questions you can answer, the more questions come back up.
Yeah,
and you can see from, like different angles, different perceptions. So I think in terms of like broadening and it's just so important to be able to ask questions and question things to find out why, hows, and I
agree. And Simon says, I think his objectivity is questionable, especially when it comes to mediums. I wonder if even considered if they're fraudulent. Right. Okay. So we've got to be honest with you now, Simon. We have become very passionate towards one of the mediums. She is a woman. When I tell you, she is a woman. She. Oh my. We're reading. Honestly, I will. But two particular mediums in particular he worked with caught our attention, and one was Ethel Johnson Meyer, and we did have a little sound bite about when she was in trance, but it was part of a promo, so I wasn't too sure whether we could use it or not. And we have got an interview, a video of an interview that was had by the other lady, which is Sybil Leek, who is an absolute queen She's a queen. Her life is unbelievable with lots of things. We'll go more into it once we get to her, but she's a phenomenal lady. So, but again, the problem with trance mediumship and mediums, coming from a person who is sensitive and of that belief system, is that it can't be objectively measured. There's no scientific approach to really measure what is happening other than the changes in the body. The heart rate slows down, the breathing slows down when you go into an altered state. So you can measure those changes within the body, but you can't do much more than that. So whatever you're experiencing, it's what is being shown to you. You've got to use your own initiative to know whether this person is or isn't. And with trance as well, it's very. If you've ever seen a trance medium, if you haven't, you should definitely go and just give it a go, because it is an experience. And transfiguration is basically what they're talking about. It's when spirit comes so close, they're able to manipulate facial features and voice. And so in these particular instances, the mediums were able to allow spirit to come so close that it was able to speak through them as such. So, like I said, we did have a little soundbite of Ethel doing this, and we can't really show it. And well, I don't know if we could or not. I just didn't want to risk it. So, but we can post it and you can see for yourself. But that's the problem with trance mediumship. And another issue that I found, and a common theme when I was looking at the different types of researches and the kind of critique in him, is that a lot of the common theme in his work is the lack of scientific research was basically meant that science could come along and debunk a lot of what he got. I found that some of the research he did wasn't historically accurate either. So there's lots of holes in there. What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go to these places with a medium, I think, at least afterwards, before you publish your findings, do the research and make sure it marries up, because otherwise you're going to look like a dick.
Which brings us to I don't think he is. I think do you know what? I think for what he did, I think there's always going to be critique. There's always going to be skeptics. But he did do a lot for the paranormal community at that time.
100%.
He shined a light in an area of psychic work and psychic research that was not being measured at that point. He brought it to the table, and he used it in a way to harness his research. Yes, okay, there is fors and against that, but no one else was doing that. So not only did he do that, but he also was a high priest. He was, as we spoke before, he got his master's in comparative religion. So he was a Protestant Christian, but he did a lot of work within different covens and within different pagan groups, to the point that he was actually made a high priest. So what he did at that point was started to put out a lot of literature regarding witchcraft. Skip ahead. No, I'm not going to find it. 2 books in particular he brought out. But not only did he do that, but he actually paved the way for serious pagan authors like Margot Alder, and they were able to put out serious pagan literature. Not only did he do this, but he also connected a lot of individuals, thousands of individuals, to pagan teachers. He made Wicca a recognized world religion. This is what he did. So not only did he do stuff within the paranormal, not only did he bring in instruments of ways of being able to communicate and to measure, but he also paved the way for a group of individuals was at this point was against the law to even believe in the witchcraft. What year was the Witchcraft Act abolished?
1951.
So
that's really recent. That's scary recent.
It is. In our lifetime, the last lady, Helen Duncan, was arrested in Scotland and charged under the Witchcraft Act for being a trance medium. And that is in our lifetime. So he did this for Wiccans and for pagans, and to really say this isn't about the devil, this isn't about worshipping, this is about recognizing the good and bad in everyone and being able to honor the balance between the both. This is what that was about. And that's what he did. So yes, there's questionability around who he is, what he done, and his approaches, but we also have to acknowledge the good that he did by putting that kind of literature and that kind of spotlight on things.
It's
So,
definitely a milestone. Definitely a
oh,
milestone.
now I've preached. Now I have preached. We, as I started the beginning of this live, we are trying something very new this time round. We are introducing videos into our lives. So this is our first time of doing this. So there is obviously going to be little, hiccups. But we have a video for you. It is a bit of a long one, but those that are familiar with Hans Holzer and those that watched the last week's live about Amityville Horror and the goings on there will be familiar with Hans Holzer and his kind of part he played during that haunt. What we did was we was able to find a interview with Hans Holzer, and he discusses the things that went on at that time. Now, he wasn't there for the foremost. He come really very much at the end. He was asked to come in when they did the live TV seance for Channel 5 with the Warrens, and the couple of other mediums was there, and the Channel 5 cast was there. So he come along to that. And he then went back after the house was vacated, and he did research with his medium, Ethel Johnson Meyer. He brought her in, and she was able to. Basically, she said that the house itself was built on a haunted burial ground, and that it had been disturbed. So the reason why we picked this case is because, as much as I'm a fan of his and kind of like tooting his horn, it is an example of how things went a little bit wrong, and how his approach to things led questions. So I hope you are able to stay and watch the whole thing. It's a little bit long, I think about 8 minutes. So get comfortable and bear with me, callers, while I get technical. Please continue to comment and let us know what you think so far. Okay.
Story, because I always like fiction and nonfiction separate. Though what I've seen here, of course, I've heard before. What is interesting to me is that the real cause of all this hullabaloo has not been mentioned by any of them, because they're not aware of it. Now, the house in question stands on an ancient Indian cemetery, and desecrating Indian cemeteries in other places has proven to be not a very good proposition. Um, I don't know how you feel about life after death. I feel there is a continuance of existence in another dimension, shall we say. It has nothing to do with religion or beliefs or disbeliefs or the supernatural. There is another side to life, which we call the other side of life, and part of us, the inner self, proceeds into that world. Now, what we have here is not a house of horror. We do not have uh, demons, because there are no such things as demons or devils. That's a fantasy that religious fanatics like to dream up. We have a couple in question here. And as far as Mr. Lutz is concerned, whatever he experienced may have been just ordinary poltergeist phenomena. That is to say, noises, and so on.
Okay, a lot of us remain skeptical. Here you are, you have studied the house in Amityville, and you have written over about 112 books now on this subject. What can you tell us? Talk to us about this mound, this Indian burial ground that you talk about.
I have been to the house more than anybody else. I was there for the first time with the famous deep trance medium Ethel Myers, and we had an Indian come through her, an Indian chief, and on further investigation, I discovered that the house was built on Indian burial ground. That
it was a shell mound. That was where they held prisoners. There were the Manasquan and the Shinnecock Indians had lived at that,
particularly
in that region.
It so happened that I found out further that in 1905, a skeleton was partially washed out by a rainstorm, and this skeleton had the skull of the skeleton was broken off by a young fellow, a child, And from that moment on, phenomena started to happen in the house.
Now, explain, if you will, Dr. Holzer, how is the fact that there was a cemetery that you say existed there, how would that create these strange occurrences, the location?
Because, again, you may feel otherwise about life after death and continuous of existence, but assuming that there is, and I know from the evidence I have accumulated over 30 years, the Indian chief, whose skeleton was being desecrated, wasn't amused. If you're somebody knocked off your block, you wouldn't particularly like it either. And apparently somebody did, played football with it, and that aroused the Indian to a warpath against anybody living in the house. That's when the fun started. There was another house on that spot.
Let me quote, please, from William Lauder. He's the director of the Amityville Historical Society, directly on your point about a burial ground. It's totally nonsense, he says. There was no cemetery or sacred ground there. It is a shame to prolong and keep this myth going. It's only for monetary gain. Anyone who believes it is a victim. It's a shameful intrusion upon reason and totally devoid of any foundation in fact.
Well, that's also not true, because I have that information from the chief librarian of Amityville, who researched it for me, and this is on tape because we made a documentary in 1977, in which he appears, where he clearly states that there was, in fact, an Indian burial ground on that stuff. Now, this comes from the librarian of Amityville, and it is on the record. So whatever you read is just not true.
But there are reasonable people out there who look at this, they read it. There are some people who want to believe it, and there are others who say, show me evidence that it's true. What evidence do you provide, Dr. Holzer, that this is true, that you're saying that there are forces of people who lived at another time, who were buried in a ground there, who are behind these forces and the supernatural occurrences?
Don't misquote me, please. I didn't say anything like that.
I'm trying to interpret.
You be very careful.
Try to understand.
Yeah, no, I didn't say anything of the sort. I said that the librarian of Amityville went to great extent. At first, he didn't like to talk about
prior
it.
to that, you were saying that because it was a burial ground, that is what is bringing out these forces, this overpowering force that is creating these problems.
Now,
Did I misinterpret that?
Don't write another fiction book.
Then please clarify it.
It's very simple. Before 1905, there was another house on that spot, which was built in 1782. See, I do my research very carefully. I don't make it up. And that house was perfectly calm until in 1905. Then suddenly, in the other house, phenomena started to occur of such a kind. People moved in and out. Somebody committed suicide. They moved the house to another spot in Amityville, and it still exists there, and nothing ever happened to that 1782 house again. Instead, there was an empty lot. On that empty lot, in 1928, a new house was built, the one that is still there. This house was built and was then inhabited by the DeFeo family. The DeFeos started having problems with it, of what we call poltergeist phenomena, footsteps and objects moving, that sort of thing. Among the DeFeos was a young man who was a natural medium. That happens. People are born that way with a sixth sense. He had that ability. If you look at the history of this young man, you find that he was unusual. He was not crazy. Mr. Weber notwithstanding, Mr. Weber is a very fine attorney, but he also makes up stories.
Ron DeFeo was also reportedly a believer of the occult. Is that true?
No. Young DeFeo neither believed nor knew the first thing about it. I interviewed him in prison, at the Denmark prison. I went in there with a tape recorder and we talked because he apparently trusted me. Young DeFeo told the truth that he didn't remember killing his family. In fact, he, in a sense, from my point of view, was a victim too. He was taken over by the spirit of this Indian. Now, this sounds strange to you, but when you have done as much work in this field as I have, you will accept that there is a part of us that goes on into another dimension. This Indian chief's entity took over the young man and killed his family through his body. And that is all there is to this house. No slime, no flies. This is all Hollywood invention. And it is just not true.
As an academic,
yeah,
and as a reasonable and understanding man, for folks out there who try to understand, how does something possess the body? How can you, as succinctly as possible, explain that?
The literature on that is extremely large. I myself contributed to it in a book called Possess. It has nothing to do with religious possession and exorcism. Please forget religion on this. This is a fact that someone who continues in existence without the physical body and requires to express himself in our world will then enter the physical body of a suitable individual and makes him do the things that he wants to do. And that is all there is to the Amityville house. There is no haunting. There is no ghost. There's an Indian chief who's still mad as hell.
And that could have been the dark shadow which Ron DeFeo allegedly claimed was hovering.
Could have been is not words I use. The fact is, DeFeo doesn't recall shooting people. There's another important scientific fact which you forgot. Nobody heard the shots in the entire neighborhood.
Pantomania.
Yeah, nobody heard it. Yeah. The people did not run from it because they didn't hear the shots either. And this is a very common phenomenon in parapsychology. I've had this happen to me in so-called haunted houses. The tape recorder suddenly will not work, or there is no sound because, my friend, a haunted atmosphere is a magnetic atmosphere, and anything that is magnetic will automatically be affected and
so they were
stop.
frozen.
Yeah, they're frozen. That's why they didn't hear it. That's why they didn't hear it.
Let's take a break. But you have some photographs. Let's show those photographs when we come back. You say provide further evidence of a little bit bizarre occurrences caused by that.
Thank you so much for staying. Oh, you stayed and watched. So a little bit about the photos that he shares. He actually shares photos of bullet holes, and above these bullet holes are little halos. Now, those that are within the paranormal and would research or look into these kind of things, we understand how these things can happen. Fraction of light, the right angle. The photos are very out of focus. I've had a look at them. They're very out of focus. And also another fact is that the tribe that he says, the burial that's there is no tribe of that name to have a burial site of that site. They were not the settlers in that area. However, they can't dispute whether there was burial sites in the area because there was burial sites up and down that country. So they're the kind of pointers. So I wonder if you are all able to understand why we shared those, because you can see how there are holes in his story because he relies so much on the mediums. Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, so you can sort of see he's very, very adamant in his beliefs. He's very, I can't describe it. What's the word I'm looking for? He's very persistent in, yes, this is gospel. This is what's going on. This is it. But there doesn't seem to be much leeway for him questioning that either. Someone in the comments I noticed, Simon Lewis, his information seems heavily based on what Ethel Myers said, which is right. So yeah, there's definitely questions would be asked because he hasn't asked them.
That's exactly it. That's right. So yeah, people are asking these questions because he's like, no, this is what she said. So obviously this is true, because otherwise why would she have said that? She's a medium. She's talking spirit. She should know what's going on. And don't get me wrong, I am a believer of, spirit, and I'm a believer of trance mediumship. But when it comes to mediumship, there is so much more that needs to go on. And a lot of his case studies, when it comes to the historical basis of things, they were able to find that it wasn't factual at all, and they were able to find things not quite right with them. Sarah, what do you think?
Do your research before you publish these things. Otherwise, you're going to look like a dick.
That's the second time you've said that. He's not a dick. He's just,
He's great. Just do your research. If it doesn't marry up, that's what people are going to think. And if people aren't going to take you seriously in what you do, if you don't, marry up your facts and your figures, because that's what people are like.
Yeah. I mean, if people are going to do research, you need to do it as well. So,
exactly.
But there was another case that he did this as well. There was a location. I think Laura's in the chat. She might have come across it. I'm not sure if I've got it in my notes. But it was a location that he went to investigate with some mediums, and he took the mediums round, and they gave some information about the homeowners and their servants, and apparently they got in touch with this one servant called Jebaniah, I think his name was, and he was saying that he was treated quite badly. And when the curator found out that this had happened, he was furious. He was like, firstly, that house isn't even in the same spot as it once was. The lady that he's referring to, Mrs. Erskine, hadn't even been into the house in the location it now is. It was like, secondly, she didn't treat the servants that she had illy. But then, we look at stone tape theory when you might not be in the location, but you've got items there that have got high significant like sentimental value, and they're attached to their items and stuff like that. So, you don't know. Could be. Curators, have you ever watched that Simpsons episode when the curator found that Jebaniah had the silver tongue, so he hid it? We've all seen that Simpsons episode. Saw that coming. Thank you. So
Did you use that as an example?
Yep. Yes, I did. I just crowbarred that in. There was no way I weren't going to use it. Oh, yeah, that's what happens. So we can see how passionate these curators can get sometimes. So again, another example of how he just uses his evidence on mediumship, trance mediumship. If you've not seen a trance medium, you definitely should go and see one, because it is fascinating. But again, you can't just rely on mediumship. As intuitive, as someone who's sensitive, when I go out on investigations, I always use my own body to kind of gauge where I find activity. I will find a differential. The only thing I can explain is like the energy is just off. It doesn't match, where one area will feel different to another. Others will say it's a cold spot, and they feel differently, but that's for me. So I will use that, but then I will use that as a way of being able to find where to put trigger objects, or where to do EVP session, or where to set up CCTV, so yeah, it's always important to do it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the mediums that we use. So this is your bag, Sarah. Let's start with Ethel.
Okay, so I couldn't actually find much on Ethel. She doesn't seem very documented.
No.
I don't know if you found anything.
I found that she was a opera singer before she became a medium. Yeah. And then the story about her husband, which I'll leave for you to share.
So basically, Ethel had no idea of her abilities, her psychic abilities, until the death of her husband. And she was absolutely distraught. So one day, I suppose, her husband came to her in a dream, was it? I'm sure it was a dream.
Yeah, it was an apparition. He comes as an apparition.
That was it.
Yeah.
And he basically said, look, I know a way for us to be together. You can't commit suicide, because otherwise we're never going to be together.
Yeah, because she was having quite dark thoughts, wasn't she? She didn't want to be without her husband. Yeah.
So yeah, that's.
She'd gone to be investigated. She'd actually gone to see someone about this apparition. Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so she actually went to the American Institute of Psychic Research, and it was there that she developed this. She kind of realized that she was a trance medium, and she was able to use her husband, this Alfred, who was the one that kind of stepped in whenever she allowed spirits to come close, to work as a trance medium. And actually, it's said that Hans actually spent more time with Alfred in spirit than he actually did with Ethel being in her body. She was the trance medium.
She didn't remember any of it, did she?
No.
She wouldn't remember anything that was said, or
no, or the fact that her husband was there. So even though there were like kind of duality between the two, never did the two cross. Never the two did meet. So, but yeah, so she was the actual trance medium they used for Amityville haunting. He was the medium for that. So yeah, so fascinating lady. But the one that we found, you know, the most fascinating was Sybil Leek, who we at 150,000,000% are going to do a whole show just for her. Yes, she saw JB Ryan. That is correct. Yes, that's who she did see. But yeah, so Sybil Leek, who is a fascinating woman, and who we are going to be doing a whole show about in a few weeks' time because she is phenomenal. But in terms of, what did you find out about Sybil?
I want her to be my grandma.
Right.
She's a legend, mate.
Yes.
So she was born in 1917 in Stoke-on-Trent in England. And she was a famous witch. She wrote multiple books. She done loads of interviews, like broadcasted on the radio, on TV. What else have I got? She moved to America. There was a whole story about that, but I'm not going to go into that because, you know, future videos and all that. So she went to America, New York, and she was contacted by Hans Holzer, who had seen some of her interviews, and he saw her on the TV, and he invited her to come and investigate. I can't say it. Is it the Whaley House? The Haley House?
The Whaley House, yes.
Whaley House.
Yes. So
Okay.
if you follow us on Facebook, we actually shared a real still from the footage of her at the Whaley House in a trance state. It's her, Hans, and then another. She was an actress that was there as well. And they were the first people that actually went and investigated this place. So he claims this to be the most haunted location in America. So that's quite a statement. And it's investigated to this day. The people are there investigating all the time, and it's a 24-hour, like, you can go for I think 6 days a week, and they do tours and all sorts there. But as far as Sybil, her life, she can trace her witch ancestry right back until the 1300s, I think it is, to the Southern Irish witches. She was actually mentored at the age of 9 by Alistair Crowley, and she was then taken in by travellers, and she lived with them until she joined a coven that was at that time 700 years old. She soon became the high priestess of that coven at the age of 20. So at such a young age, she, at a time where people were too afraid to declare that they were a witch, told people she was a witch. This was before the Witch Act was abolished, and she was very open about it. In fact, there was a fantastic story about her going to a witch's grave with her jackcloth. I gotta share it. It's so good. Okay, tune in next week. It's a fascinating lady, and there's like links to her being spy and everything. Honestly, come along. Anyway, we have found a interview with Sybil regarding the work that she did as a medium for parapsychologists on a TV show. So we're going to share that. It's not as long, I promise. It's about 3 minutes, but it gives an insight about what she did, and not just her, but other trance mediums of that time that worked with Hans. Although he is not mentioned in this video, she does refer to how she was used as such. So we're going to share this video with you right now. And I want to know, would you use a trance medium on your investigation? Because I may know one. Just saying. Would you use a trance medium on your investigation? And would that be your sole? Would you just do that as a sole investigation, like just one night, a Hans Holzer type investigation, and maybe go back the next night and kind of figure out? Oh, fun fact, she's a dame as well, so that's good.
Forget it. They
No,
just
no, no, we
pieces of
wouldn't.
paper.
No, no, no.
And it's very interesting to follow. I'm purely dedicated to research in astrology.
Well,
I love it.
You're a prolific writer. Now, you are also a medium.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen film of Sybil Leek taken into a setting where there were supposedly, or many believed to be, other poltergeists or restless ghosts. How did you start in this? Was this part of your whole background?
Well, I always accepted that reincarnation as a fact,
You do believe in
that the
reincarnation?
spirit is indestructible. And of course, I teamed up with various parapsychologists, and I was their guinea pig for years. I didn't earn any money from it. I was purely a research guinea pig.
Just like Eileen Garrett was.
Yeah,
many
really.
years,
I
early
was a
years of her
guinea
life.
pig.
Yes.
And it was very interesting, but I wasn't interested in ghost hunting as the people, the papers described it. But I was interested in proving facts that the spirit was indestructible. And my ghost hunting exploits and adventures with various parapsychologists really convinced me that the spirit is indestructible.
And did you feel that you were picking up at times distressed spirits? Or?
Yes, and I think to release them was very, very good, because a spirit that is tormented will manifest itself in many ways, not with the clanking chains and so on, but particularly a mischievous one, a poltergeist.
Yes.
I've seen houses practically destroyed. There was a house in the south of England where the Bishop of Exeter went to exorcise the ghost. Tell you the truth, he wasn't so good. Really and truly. He tried.
Yes.
But you know, the church is a little funny on exorcism. They have it there, but they don't like to use it, because then if they're taking something away, they have to admit it's there.
Right. Well, was he able to exorcise the ghost?
No, because after that I went.
And what did you do?
Well, we had a very interesting time, because this ghost had done tremendous damage in the house. And the house has been free for about 6 years now. And I think to release these troubled spirits is part of my life.
Tell me now, your mother was involved in some area of psychic phenomena?
Oh,
wasn't
my
she?
family. My two sons are far better mediums than I am.
Who were some of the people that you saw as a child in England or at your home that came to see your mother?
Oh, I had the most fantastic childhood, because I was born in England but spent a lot of the time in the south of France. My father was a very scholarly gentleman, and people like H.G. Wells would visit us.
H.G. Wells.
And Lawrence of Arabia and the Sitwells. And I really didn't know anyone when I was a child unless they were famous.
And it became a natural part of your everyday life.
It became a part of my everyday life.
Well, I don't know. I must say something. And there are times in a program that maybe it's not too often when you regret the time gone by. I know we've gone way over time. The only answer is to have Sybil back in the near future. Sybil, stay here.
And I want to teach you some card tricks.
Oh, my God. We'll be back in just a moment with an interesting...
I love her. I love her so much.
She's
makes
amazing.
the whole thing.
She is amazing. So you kind of get an insight about her and the role that she played in terms of paranormal research, and what she would have done for Hans, and what other trance mediums would have done with him when he did these types of investigations. So they all seem to have one objective, and that was to release, help, move forward those that they felt was trapped. So really, I think we've gone into one big circle, but really, whatever you feel about him, his objectives was to be able to move forward those that are trapped behind. Now, I believe in this myself. Not everyone will, but I do. And I think he pioneered. What other parapsychologist had that as their objective? There wasn't. Other parapsychologists that were using mediums that were putting the limelight on paganism or Wiccanism and paving the way for new thoughts, new ideas, new approaches and new types of research that hadn't been really considered before. The Society of Psychic Research in Kensington in London, they actually did some they actually examined some of his work, and sadly, like everyone else before him, found lots of flaws in his research methods. They believed that he was historically incorrect. They believed that he was that his scientific methods were incorrect, and the way that he presented his findings were incorrect. But who determines what's correct and what's incorrect? What if his goal wasn't to prove them right or prove him wrong, but just to be able to set free those that were trapped?
He
So who
definitely has an honorary place
yes,
within the field.
yes, and I cannot to this moment in time believe that I didn't know it existed all this time. Sad face. But my mission is this, and I'm saying this right here, right now, is that I hope that we are able to speak with his daughter, Alexandra Holson. That would be amazing. I hope that we're able to get in touch with Sybil Leake's son, Julian. I hope we're able to do that. I hope that we're able to do all these things, because I just feel like we've been talking for nearly an hour and we've barely really scratched the surface. We've just spoken about the things that we found interesting. So yes, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Also, what did you think about the films or the little movie inserts? Too much, too little, too long? What do you think? Let us know what you found interesting. Did it bore you? Would you rather not have them? And let us know. So, with that being said, I'll let you know what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. We have next week on Thursday at 8:30 p.m. we have Harry Price with Laura, Jane, and Terry. Terry is a new co-host on the platform, should we say. She is going to be joining Laura every other Thursday on their show. And next week is going to be on Harry Price. And then me and Sarah are back the following week. And we are going to be talking about the Fox's Six Sisters. Now, again, we're back with the mediums side of things, but we're going to be talking about the Fox's Sisters, who are fundamental with the spiritualist movement, but we won't be keeping it too spiritual. We'll be trying to talk about all angles. Also, no, Laura, it's you and Terry. I will just be popping in. I'll be there, just manning the chat and just being involved where I need to be. It's you and Terry next week. I'll be there as well. I will be there as well. As I can see Laura ferociously typing away in the green room, a little comeback. But yes, so join us. And also, I don't like saying the word, but if you can, just pass us around. Let people know that we exist. Anyone that might be interested in the things that we do, let them know that we're doing it. And if you want to talk about something that you are interested in, then let us know. If you would like us to talk about something that you're interested in, then please let us know. In the next couple of weeks, we'll be having investigations come up, which will have opportunities for people to come along with us. We are, and I say this, we are not an events team, but we are a team which will, we just want to get out there and do things when guidelines permitting, of course. So yeah, anything else to add, Sarah?
No, I think you've pretty much covered it.
Sorry.
But I've definitely enjoyed researching and finding out about Hans and the mediums and all his investigations that he's done. There is not a question in my mind about his prominence and how much of a role he played in bringing forward all the spiritual, should we say movement? We'll go with movement.
Yeah,
because he did. I mean, how many paranormal investigators were there back then? Like a handful, and they were ridiculed and they were like sneered at and like, really. Look at where we are now.
Yeah, on YouTube, doing our best life. He merged. We recognize the merge, and that's the most important thing. But we advise you to go do your own research. Don't just listen to us. Go and do your own research. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you found any fascinating stories. We do not own any of the copyrights of the videos that we have shared in this show. We have also done a disclaimer to say so. But we do recommend that you go and have a check out of the Travel Channel's Holzer files, which is basically all these cases, and there's some fantastic raw footage in there that I wish that I could have brought to you guys, but I couldn't have because I just didn't know whether we was allowed
Yeah,
to or
some
not.
of them recordings are amazing.
Honestly, and they put it in with their evidence, and they put it in their show. So go and check them out, and yeah, let us know what you think. Trance mediums, go and find one. And if you need one for your investigation, let us know because we can hook you up. So at this point, I'm usually used to Sarah shutting things down, but I'm doing the man in this time. So, so I'm going to say goodnight. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you for watching us live. Thank you for joining in with us. Thank you for watching us in the future. Thank you for all your support. And please let others know that we exist. So I'm going to say goodnight.
Good night.
Night. Bye, guys.